Your pops knew the breeze would be here at 7 o'clock, West Jeopardy. So Ghost came up after school, we broke in, we waited for him to come home and watch TV. Breeze didn't have time to get scared.
I loved Breeze. He was a brother to me. He was family to me.
Now, in today's breakdown, we are going to be asking the question, where is Breeze? It's actually quite funny because a lot of the comments and across social media, everybody seems to have gone from asking the question, who's Breeze, to where is Breeze? Will he be in Power Origins? Because he hasn't been mentioned by any of the articles that have come out about Power Origins. He hasn't been seen in any of the BTS images that have also been released. Not too long ago, 50 Cent also posted a picture of him, young Ghost and young Tommy. We've also seen the younger Kanan, a brand new fresh cast that's also been announced. But where's Breeze? Will he be a part of the story in Power Origins? Because remember, this is a character who had a huge influence on three of the biggest characters that started the world of Power. Of course, after watching Raising Kanan, there are other characters involved such as Rock, Unique, Snaps and Pop. Their influence in the wider Power world is also huge, and we'll definitely get into a bit of that later on in this breakdown. But since Power's inception in 2013, the show centered around the story and backstory of Ghost, Tommy and Kanan, with everybody existing around their orbit. And the one name that they repeatedly mentioned who had a huge influence was Breeze. So it definitely is important to show that story or tell that story in some shape or form. The relationship, the love, the betrayal, the brotherhood, the manipulation that was involved, which I do think they will, but it may just not be how we expect because of where they seem to be starting the timeline for Power Origins. So that's the topic of discussion in today's breakdown. We're going to be discussing all things Breeze and how we'll see them tell this story in Power Origins Season 1. Now, on Breeze's introduction into the world of Power, this is what Sasha Penn had to say post Raising Kanan Season 4, which was actually in conversation with Variety. I always felt like Breeze couldn't just come out of nowhere, that he somehow had to be organically connected to the story we were telling in the characters on the show. And he also mentioned the following, as the fans will see, he will more than live up to the task. So when he was finally introduced to Raising Kanan, the long-awaited question that we'd all been asking for the best part of 10 plus years was finally answered. Branford Frady, aka Breeze, was introduced as a nephew of Snaps and Pop. In my opinion, he was perfectly introduced, nothing too over the top, nothing too crazy, a character who was introduced to Kanan through two of the biggest players, which is what Sasha Penn mentioned by introducing him organically and having him connected to the story that they're telling in Raising Kanan. That's by introducing him through two players who have full control over not just Kanan at this moment in time, but the entire chessboard, arguably two of the biggest players in the game, past and present. Now, for those who remember post Raising Kanan Season 4, I did create a breakdown where I discussed the Snaps and Pop connection all the way to Ghost and also beyond. Over on X post episode 10, I posted, do you know what sounds crazy? Snaps and Pop cemented themselves into Power Hall of Fame in the space of a season, all from the comfort of their restaurant/bar. They've been playing chess while everybody else has been playing checkers. They've got everybody on strings, and their influence in terms of the wider Power universe shouldn't go unnoticed. For me, they've entered the Power Hall of Fame. Now, just taking it back to the beginning of my breakdown, I mentioned three big players in the world of Power, and they were Ghost, Kanan and Tommy. But if you think about beyond that, who were the characters that kickstarted the cycle of Power? When it's all said and done, when we watch all these shows from the beginning, you can argue Rock and the Thomases, no doubt. That's because of their influence over Kanan at a young age, the lies and all the manipulation. But Snaps and Pop are two of the biggest characters in the entire Power universe who kickstarted a chain of events that will follow on into Raising Kanan Season 5, Power Origins, what we saw unfold in Power, Power Book 2 Ghost, and also in Force.
Understand when you're talking to us, you're talking to the ancestors, the forefathers and the forebears. All at the same fucking time. We made the game, Raquel.
They made the game, they were the original OGs, but by Snaps and Pop introducing Kanan to Breeze, who would then later influence Ghost and Tommy, which years later, it would then trickle down to characters like Tariq St. Patrick.
I killed Breeze because he got in the way of my future.
Tried to give you one last chance like you said you did with Breeze, but you're in the way. You're in the way of my future like you said he was in the way of yours.
The story of Breeze made Tariq realize that Ghost was in the way of his future and he had to kill Ghost, just like Ghost had to kill Breeze. And I do think it's the perfect segue into the importance of Breeze's character, why we need to see this relationship between Ghost and Breeze, Tommy and Breeze, and also Kanan and Breeze. What happened between them? We know you can't tell the story of young Ghost and Tommy without having the younger Kanan, which is why Kanan is crossing over from Raising Kanan to Power Origins. But the same could also be said about Breeze, which is why we went through what we just went through. Breeze is no doubt an integral part of the entire Power universe for more reasons than one, because indirectly he would have had an influence on Tariq's decision to kill Ghost. Just like Breeze was in the way of Ghost's future, Ghost was in the way of Tariq's, and that's when Tariq realized he had to kill Ghost. We all had Kanan when he came to Ghost Penthouse in Season 2. Why wouldn't Roller want to take out the boss? It's the same shit that he did to Breeze. From hustling on the corners, working for Kanan and Breeze, they were able to build this, Club Truth, and make it in the big city. Tommy also mentioned they looked Breeze straight in the eye and pulled the trigger, whereas Kanan's account was very different. And that's one of the main plot points I do think we need to learn more about. Who was lying, who was telling the truth, what happened. Even Joseph Sikora also recently spoke about the topic.
Omari and I came up with it, which I think was a really cool idea, is that Tommy had the drop on Breeze, could have taken all the glory, but let Ghost have that kill because he knew that that would advance him. And Tommy somehow, without even realizing it, just knew that Ghost needed to lead and Tommy needed to follow it.
In an interview with TV Line, he spoke about how he had his own theories about what happened the night Breeze died. We also know Breeze was the one who also gave a young James the nickname of Ghost.
We knew this guy Breeze when we were kids. He came up with Ghost. He said the kid had the ability to disappear. Never saw him coming, you never saw him leave.
Now the point I'm trying to make is Breeze is a very integral part to the story and development of three major players in the world of Power through the introduction of Snaps and Pop. He was the one who not only helped them advance in the game, but he was actually the one who named a young James Ghost. They developed the bond where Ghost said that he loved Breeze like a brother, he didn't want to kill him, he gave him one more chance, he asked him to change his mind, but he didn't, so he forced his hand. He killed Breeze because he got in the way of his future. But the question and mystery remains around what happened in the build-up to Breeze's death. What really happened the night he died? What's the truth? Because just like we spoke about, when we go back to Power, there are a few different accounts and versions, not just in terms of his death, but also how certain people perceive his character.
Breeze was strong, but he wasn't smart. The same routine every day.
Whereas in Raising Kanan, that's definitely not how he was introduced by Snaps and Pop. There are definitely a lot of questions at this moment in time, but just not enough answers, which many thought we would be getting in Power Origins because there is a lot of missing pieces they do need to fill. There are a lot of gaps that they do need to fill, and it is the unknown and the mystery of what happened, which is why we're asking the question in terms of, will Breeze be in Power Origins? You guys all definitely want to know, including me, the how and why, what happened in between, what happened in the build up to Breeze's death. Breeze was said to be a bad dude by Ghost, he was going to get them all killed, but why? What was Breeze up to in the streets that was going to get them killed? Was he about to start a war with a rival crew? Who were they? Did he start some serious shit with people that Ghost wasn't down with? Or was Ghost manipulated by Kanan into killing Breeze? But again, the mystery is, how did Kanan manipulate Ghost? What did he tell him that convinced him that he had to be the one to pull the trigger on someone that he loves? The reason why this story is really important and why it matters in terms of the broader Power world is because it connects all the dots all the way back to Snaps and Pop and the chain throughout the Power universe. It fills all the gaps of the story. Breeze's eventual death sets the stage for Kanan to take over the game, then having Ghost and Tommy under him. And just going back to the question, did Kanan have anything to do with Breeze's death? We only have to ask the question, who benefits from getting rid of Breeze? Who would have been next in line to take over the game in Queens? Who would have also learned the game of betrayal and manipulation from Snaps and Pop? Who was the biggest manipulators and chess players in Power? That was Kanan Stark. So did he have something to do with Breeze's death? Definitely plausible. I do think it's a kind of a logical way to look at the scenario. But when it comes to the moment itself, Ghost mentioned that he loved him like a brother, he gave him one last chance, which does actually remind me of the time Ghost killed Roller.
I'm offering you a chance to come clean.
Nah, that ain't it. You offered me a chance to convince you. It's Kanan, right? You and that crazy motherfucker still tight after all these years. Shit, you trust him more than anybody.
If Ghost felt the same way with killing Breeze, watching that on screen would be one hell of a throwback, and explain why Ghost was very hesitant to kill Roller, why he wanted Roller to convince him and change his mind, because he would have been here before. He did the same thing with Breeze back in the day, and that's what a lot of us want to see. Breeze is a character who is very much involved in a lot of the history that shaped the Power universe as we know it and shaped the characters that we know, which I'm sure Sasha Penn already knows anyway, but the fact that we don't have Breeze being mentioned in any of the articles for Power Origins, any confirmation, the fact that they're starting the timeline in the early 2000s, that's why a lot of people are questioning where will Breeze be in the story of Power Origins. And I do think first things first, I do think we need to see how they tell the story in Raising Kanan Season 5 first. How do they end things in Season 5? What influence does he have? How much of a role does he play? Sasha Penn said he won't disappoint, but how do they end things in Season 5? And on that particular topic, Sasha Penn said the following. He is such a seminal character in the Power universe. I had always felt like I wanted him to be in the final season of this series, so fans could really sort to live with him and get to know him. I believe that we answer almost all questions, but we don't answer every single question. I think it's a real emotional journey. It's a worthy ending to the story that we set out to tell. I think people will be stunned to see how the story ends up. Now, that's Sasha Penn talking about the ending of Raising Kanan. They answer almost all the questions, but they don't answer every single question. Which, when you think about for Season 3 just recently, they've left a lot of loose threads for us to think about. And once we see all these open questions with Raising Kanan, which I believe Breeze will be one, then we'll probably have more of an idea of where they're taking the story for Power Origins. For example, why Traymon will be returning, why Teresa Baselli will also be returning. There are also a lot of questions that I do expect to remain open, along with the Breeze question, a character who apparently won't disappoint. Sasha Penn has teased that he will live up to expectations, and I have no doubt about that. I fully trust and believe in Sasha Penn. We have no reason to doubt him with the fantastic and phenomenal work that he has done with Raising Kanan. But the fact that they're starting the timeline in the early 2000s with Breeze most likely being dead by that point, what does that mean for how they tell the story of Power Origins? With a character who's supposed to be very integral to the history, relationship, and development of three major players, Kanan, Tommy, and Ghost. I do think we will see him, and the story and the gaps will most likely be told in the form of flashbacks, almost like they are serving us one piece at a time of a very large puzzle. And by the time we get to the end of Season 1, we'll have a full picture or part of the picture in terms of what happened with Breeze's death and their relationship. All those questions that we asked earlier in the breakdown in terms of why, what was the conversation between Ghost and Breeze, did Kanan have anything to do with it, what was Tommy's role, where was he in the story. All of that will definitely be answered through flashbacks and conversations based on them starting the timeline in the early 2000s. Same thing with Curtis St. Patrick's death. I do think introducing Ghost's grandmother, Grandma Charlene, will provide a lot of answers in terms of that. For those who also watch Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, think about how they did it. They sometimes use flash forwards at the beginning of the episode where they'd show a specific event which would actually leave us confused and asking the question, wait, how? What happened? How did they end up here? Have they caught Walter White? But by the time you get to the end of the episode, every question that we had in the opening 30 seconds or couple of minutes is eventually answered. It really was a masterpiece, and I do think that's what Power Origins will definitely feel like. We have a ton of questions, some of which we touched on in this particular breakdown, that they will no doubt answer through flashbacks and conversations, giving us bits and pieces of the puzzle, but not giving us everything, just teasing us with enough just to keep us intrigued, keep us hooked, wanting to know more. Relationships that we don't know about, manipulation, betrayals, arguments, fights. In the flashbacks, will we see Breeze giving a young James St. Patrick his nickname as Ghost? The writers definitely have a lot of free reign here with the timeline that they're starting the show in, especially if they're going to go down the route of telling us the story that we heard from Power through flashbacks, because then it also leaves a lot of room for a lot of new story that we haven't heard about, which I do think is even more important. I'm not saying the history of Breeze, Curtis St. Patrick, or Angela Valdez isn't important, because it definitely is, but they can definitely tell that through flashbacks. What I'm saying is, there is going to be more story beyond Breeze, beyond Ghost being heartbroken over Angela, and beyond the death of Curtis St. Patrick. That can definitely all be told through flashbacks and through conversations given us to us in pieces. But what about everything else that we don't know? For example, Grandma Charlene, Ghost crew that used to be underneath him, what happened to characters like Jay Boogs, who seems like a very loyal soldier to Tommy and Ghost. Of course, we all want to know exactly what happened with Breeze and see this relationship develop, but I do think it's equally as important to tell us a story that we also haven't heard in Power. What else happened beyond Breeze? Who else mentored Ghost and Tommy? Just like Kanan. He wasn't just mentored by Breeze, he was schooled by Rock, Marvin, Snaps and Pop, as we've all seen in Raising Kanan. So who else influenced Ghost and Tommy besides Breeze and Kanan? Because there definitely will be others. So I personally am okay with them giving the story in flashbacks if that's how they intend to keep Breeze in the story. Maybe we get an entire episode that's a complete flashback on Breeze. They've got 18 episodes, so that can easily be done as well. But I am okay if they want to tell the story through flashbacks, because I do think it would be quite different, it would be quite effective. The way Breaking Bad did it was masterfully done, but with 18 episodes for Power Origins Season 1, with the use of flashbacks, they can also concentrate in telling us what we don't know about Ghost, Tommy, and Kanan's past, things that we never heard in Power, which I do think is equally as important. So I do think they are going to drip feed us backstory through conversations and flashbacks, which I do think will be very effective. The fact that they've got 18 episodes for Season 1, I mean, they can really take their time with it. There may be an entire episode which is a flashback. That's something I definitely wouldn't rule out. So I definitely do expect to see Breeze. I do expect them to fill the gaps, whether he's alive in the timeline or dead. I'm expecting all the gaps in the questions that we've asked in this breakdown to be answered. But what I think we all should be looking forward to seeing as well is everything beyond the history that we learned in Power. Things that weren't spoken of, relationships, arguments, fights, manipulation, other characters. So definitely just something to keep in mind. With that being said, drop all your thoughts down below in the comment section. Let me know your thoughts on Where's Breeze. But as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.